Baobab Brilliance, Perspectives on Audacity, features Black women who are the embodiment of don't speak about it, be about it. Black women who write the vision and make it plain. I'm your host, Makia Moody. Let's get into it.
Hello, Jara.
Good morning, Makia. How are you?
I am well. I am feeling resourced, and I just lit a candle to kind of clear the energy in my space, and I'm really excited to be talking to you.
Thank you.
How are you?
It's always a joy and an honor, so thank you. I appreciate it.
There's so much mutual. I'm going to work on not fangirling, but I might not work that hard at it, actually. So
I think there should be more girl love and more fangirling, to be super clear. I don't think we're supportive of each other enough in public and private spaces, so bring it.
Okay, well, I have plenty.
I will return it.
I have plenty for you. For you. Because I was reflecting back on when I first interviewed you in 2020 for Black and Bold, Perspectives on Leadership, which was my first interview series. And I think I reached out to you not knowing you, but having followed you on LinkedIn and read some of your work about equitable evaluation. And you were so gracious to talk to a stranger. And since then, you have been super helpful in some of the most random things, like intellectual property and thinking about how to, protect my creative endeavors and whatnot. And so, I feel like I know you've done that for me. And then when I look at the receipts on LinkedIn, I can rattle off a number of other people that are singing your praises and talking about your generosity of spirit and how you just like sprinkle glitter in the world. And so I'm grateful.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. First, I would say they're all connected. They're not random to me. It's all part of, I think, what it means to be an agent, a woman, and particularly a Black woman in this space. I think there aren't, at least for me, there wasn't a me when I was growing up in this space. So I had to figure out a lot of stuff on my own over the last 25 years or so. So I'm of the mind and heart that if there's anything I can share that makes it easier for anyone else, then that's part of my responsibility, right? So I'm glad that I can share what I've learned and the mistakes that I've made and the choices I've done and the thing. Yeah, I'm glad. To me, I love doing it. And the glitter thing made me laugh because when my best friend's daughter was little, she believed in fairies. She might still believe in fairies. And I always have a little sparkle in my lip gloss. And she would ask me, because it would get all over my face, she would say, "Why do you have glitter on your face?" And I would say, "Because I was kissed by fairies." And she would have this look on her face like, I might believe that. So I love the idea of magic and glitter. That just made me think of that.
Yeah. I mean, that makes me wonder, actually. So you've just talked about magic, glitter, fairies, and it brings me to this sense of possibility, which you often write about, like on LinkedIn. You post about kind of just so many things that you're mulling over, and you have this sense making and you're interrogating and you're, finding space to be still and just kind of receive the downloads. And I think for me, this last year and change has challenged my sense of possibility. So
for sure.
I don't feel the magic. I feel like I've aged a lot more than I really have, just with the way that the world is and so many challenges. And granted, there's still sunlight and beauty. And also I've found myself kind of in this place of like more despair, maybe, than more possibilities. And so, in one of your pieces from summer 2021 called Edges, you had talked about like the practices that are necessary to stay on the edges when every fiber of your being craves multiplicities, complexity, and abundance and only sees possibilities. So I think with that same fairy energy, like, can you help me out? Like, how is it that you only see possibilities living in these yet to be United States of America?
Yes, these federated states, as I refer to it, on stolen land, fueled with stolen blood. Yeah, that's how I think about this place. Well, again, can you help me out? Made me laugh. And so I had to think about it. And so I went back. So a few things came up for me. I come from a lineage of people that I can trace back to the late 1600s on these lands that were free and enslaved and managed to own their own land, live their own lives, as well as fight for the freedom of all. So part of it, I think, is genetic over generations, like slightly wired that way. I think another part of it is that I was born with a cowl on my face. And in some cultures that suggests that there is some wisdom and there's some foresight. And then I am a Capricorn rising, Scorpio moon, and a Sagittarius sun. And when you put all of those together, it says I'm comfortable with multiplicities, that I can see the both and plus, and that I am by nature optimistic, but not delusionally Pollyanna-like. So when you ask me about what are the practices, I think in some ways I was just universally designed to actually think about what else might be possible, because I come from people who were not limited by the limits that were placed on them. And the universe granted me some wisdom and some gifts that allow me to move here, but also believe that here is only a moment in time. Does that make sense at all? Like, I feel like I'm here and not here most of the time, that I am transitory, that this is just a spark, literally. I'm just a spark. And so I don't get so caught up in the day-to-day. It doesn't mean that I, too, am not weary from being in this body, in this place during these times. But I also know they're just these times. They're not all times. Was that remotely coherent?
I think so. But I'm also working to just flow when there's pieces that kind of emerge where I'm curious about them. So It was coherent. I've got some follow-ups. Things
I would assume as much. Yeah.
Things that are kind of bouncing around for me. So there's something about, I think you said universally designed. So there's something about like the ancestral wisdom, lineage, like your DNA having something special in it, based on like from whence you come. And then also like a distancing from the present moment not being the end all be all. Like if you're just a spark in these times, but not all times. Like it sounds a little poetic. Like I'm thinking maybe it could be a lyric that Mos Def would have written around like transcending and being here, but not here. There's something about shape-shifting. I think that's the word coming to me. You like ebb and flow through spaces and aren't confined to one, especially given, I think, the multiplicities that you've mentioned and how you exist in those multiplicities. So it's not really a question. It's more of just a reflecting back what I got from what you shared, around, I guess, like how you navigate through this world that is not just this world.
Exactly. Right. And I don't believe in perpetuity. Right. It's one of the things. I don't believe that everything lasts forever. I'm not fixated on control in that way. I don't think about legacy. I don't hold to some of the aspirations and belief systems around what I leave behind in some sort of concrete way. So for me, and it causes me consternation at moments because I think I'm preoccupied with it at the moment, is that how might I and for long can I be of service in the way that I can be in this moment? bringing with me all that I know, all that I am, which is a result of my lineage, my ancestral, right? All that was perhaps given to me by the date at which I was born. Like, what is the highest and best use of all that in a way that advances liberation?
So for example, like this is probably like word salad right now, but I'm thinking back to when we first spoke and one of my questions was like, tell me about your role. Mm-hmm. And you offered that your current role back in 2020, quote, merged critical friend, optimist, feminist, strategist, provocateur, and coach, end quote. And so like, I feel like the multiplicities that you talk of are kind of like cross-cutting, like up, down, sideways, like it is you. And so I guess I'm curious about like the space that you're occupying as this spark. Mm-hmm. How is it that those different dimensions of you manifest in like your work, your life, your play?
You're probably not a good person to ask that question. That's one of those questions where I would like default to a group of like 8 people that know me and say, how would you answer that question? And then thank you for your notes. And then I would respond, which I think that response to your question already tells you a little bit about my ability to discern that. How might people find me useful or beneficial is different than what I might believe is my benefit. And so, although I know I have some gifts, I've been, for the most part, not to the point of self-sacrifice, been driven by what and how people tell me that I am useful and beneficial to them. And that has been how I've carved out my, quote, career, for lack of another term. Right? Because there's lots of things I could do. Maybe I can still do them. And there were things that I wanted to do. But when I started this trajectory in 2002 was when I launched ADC Partnerships. One of the things that I did was, at that point, I had a couple consulting clients and friends and colleagues, and it was like sort of early on in the philanthropic sort of growth in California. I asked people what they thought was unique about me. And there were things that they enjoyed that were just my default way of being. I don't know that that is how I would have necessarily programmed my trajectory, my career, my offering. I might have done it based on what I thought people wanted, as opposed to what people said that was actually really unique and you should dive into that. Right? Because I'm always trying to figure out how to be of service and then leave. To my point about the perpetuity.
And being a spark.
Yeah, and then go. And sometimes I stay longer, right? And maybe there's little sparks, but I'm never trying to stay the whole time.
Well, that makes me think that maybe you should run for political office because so many people stay too long, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah, I've said too much to be a viable candidate at this point. No. And also, no.
No is a full sentence.
No, exactly. Oh, I love that. No is a full sentence. No, thank you.
So I mentioned earlier when I was asking you to help me out with like this sense of possibility, that it's been a challenging time with kind of the, I think, unrelenting, like waves of grief and just navigating uncertainty and then seeing like the worst of humanity in a lot of ways and also some bright spots. And it feels very inconsistent. And so I read Cole Arthur Riley's book, Black Liturgies, which was such a balm for my soul. And she has a chapter dedicated to joy. And in that chapter, she writes, quote, "I'm writing to let you know that you are more than your pain, that you can feel deeply without being consumed. For you, I want laughter. And if you cannot locate your laughter, may you find some dispensations of comfort. I need you to survive this terrible, beautiful place. Sorrow alone will starve you." End quote. And I felt convicted by that because joy is a choice. And And I'm wondering how you go about inciting joy.
I can see Ross Gay's book. So it was before her book had come out, because I was in search of a practice that would ground and still me in a way in which I felt that I needed. And my body had been sending me messages that my annual wintering was not sufficient to recuperate from the 10 months of the annual year, and that I actually needed to have a practice that was more consistent. And I cannot remember the reading, but there was this one session that we had, and one of the offerings was this idea that you are joy before the world gets to you. Mm-hmm. And that was pretty revelational for me. So for me, I am joy. Right. And so that same year, I started to craft a morning prayer, which I say every morning before I wake up. And the first couple lines of the prayer are, I embrace the dawn, remembering that I am joy. So I wake up every morning remembering that I am a divine expression of cosmic wonder.
I love that. Divine expression of cosmic wonder.
Right? Each of us are. And then the world tells us things about what we can and cannot be doing. You know, it limits us. The world does that. But I was joy and I am joy if I can figure out how to navigate what the world has predetermined as possible for me.
A cosmic wonder and a spark that transcends this world that is not the only world. I feel like, I know you are a writer. I kind of feel like there's something lyrical, though, about this conversation, that maybe one of your other dimensions could be something related to songwriting. There's like I don't know. I feel like this conversation has been musical for me, with some of the things you've lifted up that are like the visual anchors that I now have.
Oh, I appreciate that. And so that might be part of it. There was always music in my house. I know, and this isn't something I practice nearly enough, but I know that my spirit is different during the day when I listen to music in the morning, rather than instantly getting on the screens and the Zooms and the emails and the texts. And I know when I start my day singing, my heart is lighter and fuller. So I do think that there's something about music that is transcendent and powerful. So I only did a little bit of that today. I didn't do as much of it as I had intended. So I'm glad that there was some musicality and rhythm to whatever I've been offering you today so far.
No, I feel like music and nature are two elements that are generally free for me and also so transformative. Like if I get on a call that really raises my blood pressure or just has me in a lot of like WTF mind space, I can put on Afro beats or Whitney and they will do the trick to like reset me.
They will reset you?
Yeah. There's like, it's amazing when when I'm actually quiet and go outside to just look and not be on my phone or really listening to music, to see the sunset. There have been so many sherbet skies, late summer in southern New Hampshire that have been kind of mesmerizing. Lovely. And then yesterday I was running an errand for my mom and it started raining and there was a rainbow on Broad Street, which I love rainbows. They have significance to me because I always feel like it's my oldest brother who passed away.
He's saying hi.
Yeah, like 26 years ago yesterday. And so it was timed perfectly.
Oh, wow.
And it was just this beautiful rainbow. And then I went over 2 blocks and it wasn't raining.
Yeah, so hello.
It was, hey. Yeah. So it's just
a shout out. Oh, I love that.
So I think that the nature, when I'm able to extract myself from all of the devices and AI and Zoom and social media, there's something restorative and replenishing that just helps recalibrate. That actually brings me to the name of this series, and I'm so honored that you are my first guest.
Oh, I'm honored.
On BOVAB Brilliance, Perspectives on Audacity. And for listeners who don't know, the BOVAB tree is considered the tree of life. There are a number of them on the African continent. It's resistant to fire and plays a crucial role in its ecosystems by providing food and water and shelter. And it also can store a ton of water in its trunk.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of directions I have here related to the name of this series and this tree. But I know you spend a lot of time in nature. You post like the sunsets and the ocean and butterflies and flowers. What wisdom comes to you from the bounty of Mother Earth?
The insignificance of my significance. I am just one of many before and at this moment. Right? So when I am in nature, and particularly when I'm flying, that moment when you get above the clouds and you see nothing that's human made, except for, of course, you're in this plane. But, if you just look out and see the horizon, that moment for me is incredibly grounding and freeing, because I understand that I matter and also I don't. Because I am one of many before, at this moment, and hopefully that will follow, right? And when I say many, I don't just mean humans. I mean all of the species, right, that are on this planet that we get to live on for the period by which we get to live on, right, as individuals and as a species. So when I go out in nature, that reminds me that. And so my shoulders come down a little. My breathing gets deeper. My feet spread on the ground, and I remember that I'm part of, and that it's not all mine.
It just makes me think about the insignificance of my significance and how there's so much around us kind of creating, needing to put on armor to navigate, when really, we should be floating like butterflies and just free. But there's a lot of protection that has to happen in order to sometimes navigate the spaces that we're in. But when I think about myself, even 5 years ago, I was a different version of Makia that was,
of course,
less, not yet my full-throated self, probably a little less sure. I didn't yet know that no is a complete sentence.
Oh,
and there was probably more contorting myself in order to climb this ladder, get to whatever I thought success was. So I guess I'm wondering, is there a point in time when you realize the games are games and I don't need to play them?
Well, I think I can say I always knew the games were games based on how I was raised and the conversations that my folks had growing up. Right. So I always knew that all of this was not real and that it's a construct designed to limit me, right? Particularly in the skin, right? So I got that, and we talked about that. My parents did a phenomenal job of supporting me in being me while also being able to take advantage of resources and experiences that a me might not conventionally be available to. And they both grew up in both Black and sort of white spaces. So I understood from their experiences and my own experiences how to move with ease and some sort of comfort. I will say that being a consultant, I did know fairly early on that there were certain ways, I don't want to say ways, I would say that I spent the first 10 years of consulting paying attention and learning about what it meant and what it looked like and what were some of the rules and even just some of the rules of running a business. And then as I've gotten older, I've just become more me, is what I would say. Because I think there is I'm more established, I guess is what I would say. right? And I knew that there was time and experience and relationships that would be important for me to have or to nurture that would support me ideally when I sort of became my fullest expression of self.
That cosmic divine energy. Yes, yes, I see it. I see it. Well, I'm smiling because, as my coach would say, I have an invitation for you.
Oh, okay.
And that is, I find, like, you spark joy for me on LinkedIn when I see a note or an update about some musing of yours.
Because thank you.
You're welcome. Because it's so, not so far, but it's just like not my operating model. So it's like when I see something that you've written about, like the sunset and kind of what that's sparking for you, it makes me kind of reassess a little bit to be like, oh, right, the sun came up today. Like,
a good day.
Right. Like, I am still in the land of the living.
Yes.
So I wonder if, like, the invitation would be around, like, where you can go to be sparked, like, what needs to be true for that to happen. Because I think it can be built or designed. Like, even if it's just a salon with, like, badass people that, like, are really visionary and kind of, like architects and designers and scientists and, like, all the people. I just feel like it's, that it might be within reach. And now I'm really curious because I want to come too.
Well, if I figure it out, I shall let you know. And I'm also a firm believer, because I've experienced it, that once you put it out in the universe with some clarity, something will show up, right? So I am intrigued, interested, looking for other spaces and places, right, where whatever this is I am, whatever it is I offer, can be of service, right? And I can be nourished in those spaces. And I don't know. Yeah. So I'm open.
Awesome. Is there anything else that you want to share before I ask my final question and then sing your praises a little bit more before we wrap up?
Oh, you're sweet. No, I don't think so. I'm good.
So my last question is, what's a word or phrase that describes how you are leaving our energy exchange today?
So I had written contemplative, and I think that still holds true. Although I would say perhaps it's a little bit more heartful than it was. It was more headful before. And so I think I am more embodied in that state of what else might be.
Yay! I like it. Well, Jara, I am always grateful to be in spaces with you because you have a very bright light. The name of this series, like the following, is Perspectives on Audacity. And when I look at your posts and think about some of the writing that you've done, the way that you have challenged philanthropy to be better and do better, as well as other systems and the spaces that you enter into, I think you are the embodiment of audacious, and you don't suffer fools, which is a great model for me. And so with lots of gratitude, I thank you for being my first guest on Bobab Brilliance, because you are brilliant.
I am deeply humbled by the invitation, and I do always really appreciate our time together, whether it's like this or whether it's in LinkedIn or email. And one day, perhaps we'll actually be closer in person to each other, because that would be also wonderful as well. And I want to applaud you for creating and taking space to have these kind of conversations and to make them available to other folks. As I said in the beginning, I think there should be more girl love and more fangirling. So just know on this end, super fangirl, was before, remains so. Yeah. And I'm excited about where you go with this. And I do love the new name.
Awesome.